I'm excited. Welcome. Not so as professional as you're probably used to, but this is what we work with.
There's no like six cameras and...
No, this is it. This works.
Alright, well, welcome back. Another episode of the Murph and Mitise show.
In this next song, you must march around the room. Here we go.
I know what the fuck I'm doing. Just sit down in the chair.
We have Will McDonald here. I'll let you introduce yourself. You can...
Sorry, yes, Will McDonald. I'm one of Josh's clients at the PT gym, Mitise Fitness. He pushes me real hard, but I don't think that's exactly why I'm here.
No, that's not why you're here today. Not at all. I'm going to let, like I said, I'll let Murph lead this one because I don't know much about you. And you can ask any question you want.
Cool. So it's funny, the very first time I saw you, I walked into the gym, I'm like, fuck, I know you from somewhere. Like, the face looks familiar, and I don't watch the news by the way, so just somewhere I picked up on you. And I went home I said, Josh, what's that dude's name? He goes, which one? The one in the Land Rover, what's his name? Will. Alright, cool. I went home, Google, Will. Obviously, shit ton of Will's popped up.
Will, Mitise,
Will Adelaide. Will Adelaide. I started just figuring out, all of a sudden it came down to news reporter, Channel 9. Will, I'm like, fuck, that's where I know him from.
Yep.
So you're a news reporter, Channel 9?
Yeah, that's it. So my job is I'm a news presenter, reporter, producer at Channel 9 in Adelaide. I do the 6 p.m. weekends, and then I do our 5 p.m. bulletin Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Cool.
And I work behind the scenes, in front of the camera. I've done a bit of everything over the past 20 years in media.
Yep.
I've done camera work, editing, presenting, producing, reporting.
Jeez,
So
I feel judged all of a sudden.
no, it's jack of all trades, master of none. Yeah, it makes you. Maybe if you learn a lot of things, I always figured it makes you hard to sack.
That's true. Yeah.
My dad always says that. My dad works at the production plant and advertiser, and he was like, I think it's been there 40 years or 35 years or whatever, and he's like, I can do everything there. And I said, why is that? He goes, because if I can do everything, they can't find me. It's like,
You can always be used somewhere.
you can always be used somewhere. So anyway, so continue.
Okay, so you've been doing that for a fair while then?
Yeah, so I started in journalism in Port Lincoln actually as a video journalist. That's where I learned to use the camera and edit. So I was also behind the camera, in front of the camera, doing everything. That was
Explain video journalist.
So video journalist, it basically means instead of as you operate in the city, where you have a cameraman and a reporter,
Yep.
I was the cameraman and the reporter.
So it's basically like a journalist selfie the whole time.
That's pretty much. Flip the screen around, have the camera set up, you could film yourself, you could do all sorts, shoot your own interviews. It worked, and it taught you a lot as well. So that was in the year 2000. Back when I was about 22, I started in Port Lincoln as a video journalist doing everything.
Okay.
And it was hard.
Yep.
Because you don't really know much when you're 22, light in any way.
Yep. So you did all your editing and everything.
Yep. So from the camera work to when I get back to the studio, I'd edit the story, I'd write the story, I'd voice the story.
Wow.
Yep.
And what were the stories you were focused on? Did you specialise in anything? Or
when I was in Port Lincoln, for example, it was a lot of things about the tuna fishing industry, because that was what was big there. But pretty much everything that was local to that area. About 4 years later, I finally made it back to Adelaide at Channel 9, and I started working as a producer and a reporter.
Okay.
So I did stuff behind the scenes and on camera out on the road as well. And that was pretty much everything too. From car crashes, house fires, local politics, medical stories, court stories, bushfires, anything that happened, I'd be sent to. So I like the variety of, you never knew what you were going to get.
Did you ever get in trouble for rocking up to places that, like, oh, the damn media's here?
Oh,
like an Anchorman?
It's
I watch too many FBI shows. Quick, get the media.
There's always a bit of yin and yang when it comes to television reporters turning up somewhere.
Yeah.
Sometimes people are tremendously happy to see you, and they want to tell your story, their story, and they love it, and it's a good event, or they just want to get their story out.
Yeah.
Other times, as you've probably seen, you'll get stuff chucked at you. Bricks, rocks, the hose turned on you, cameras smashed. It doesn't happen that often, but it certainly does happen.
Chase people?
Like Frank Pangillo?
I know Frank, he's phenomenal. He used to get his foot in the door so much. The only time I've really chased people would have been outside courts.
Okay.
So when there's a court story going on and someone doesn't want to be filmed, which is probably a lot of people when they've been charged with something quite nasty, they sometimes run. And we chase them. So
you'd be great at now with all the Muay Thai training.
Yeah, that's right. I was
backpedaling.
I was better when I was younger and my knees worked.
Yeah, that's sorry, keep going. That's crazy. I love that.
And probably last question, bit of a joke still. It was only like, so obviously we watch Anchorman and they do the anchor battles. Anything closer? Is there a rivalry? But I know you're not having weapons and whatnot, but is there a rivalry between 7, 10, 9, ABC?
There's definitely a rivalry in terms of we all want to get the story first and we want to be better than everyone else. We've never had physical battles, I'm pretty sure. At least I've never had any. There used to be in the olden days, but I'm talking like 10, 15, 20 years ago, they used to do sometimes charity football or cricket matches or something like that. But I think the charity football matches might have descended into a little bit of hard hitting, so to speak.
A bit of brawling.
Yeah, a little bit of playing the man and not the ball. But
you haven't done that yet?
I haven't done that.
Okay.
No, I'm not built for football.
Damn, so Anchorman's not real.
No. Parts of it are probably. Parts of it are just not the fight with the trident. That's all.
So you should have seen like Will driving down Port Road today, driving past Channel 7, just winds the window down.
No, I definitely didn't do that.
I kid, didn't happen. I just had that image in my head as I was riding past. I was like, wonder who's going to be triggered.
We all get we all do get along, like rivals TV stations. It's just, like any business, you want to be better than your rival.
Of course,
yeah,
of course. So let's skip past a few more things now. So you obviously come to see Josh for reasons.
Yes.
Yep. Explain that.
All right, so my association with Josh in personal training was when it was about May last year, so almost 12 months ago, when I started to get a weird hip joint pain, left hip joint, and it didn't make sense as to why it hurt. I couldn't figure it out. So a few went to the physio. Physio went, there's some inflammation in the hip joint, it'll be okay. A couple of weeks later, it got worse. Went back to the physio, he said, okay, this is not making sense. We'll get an x-ray and ultrasound. Had that done, didn't really show anything, bit of inflammation. Time progressed over the next couple of weeks, and I went, this is just getting worse. Then I went and got an MRI, because I also skydive as one of my hobbies. Fortunately, I say to people sometimes, skydiving saved my life. Odd scenario. But it was one day of jumping on a Friday, and I'd done 4 jumps that day, and I was driving home and went, wow, my hip really hurts. Like it was weird. It didn't make sense. No hard landings, no anything. Jumps that I've done before. I went, so next morning, called up the GP. He said, okay, I've got an appointment today, so we managed to get in. He said, okay, we need to get an MRI. Had an MRI done the following Wednesday, so this was, by this stage, it was about the middle of July last year, 2020.
This is 2 months from the first time.
This is about 2 months from the first time when my hip started hurting. I finally got an MRI because it just didn't make sense as to what was going on. And then about 45 minutes after the MRI was done, they called me and said, the GP called me and said, can you make an appointment to come in? And I went, wow, that was quick. They're pretty efficient usually by GP, not that efficient. And so I said, I can come in tomorrow. They said, fine, tomorrow. This is on a Thursday. So I went in and they said, okay, we've got the results of your MRI. And they showed the thing on the screen. And they said, all these little white spots there, they're almost certainly cancer. And I went, ooh, this explains things. Terrifying to start with because they couldn't tell me what sort of cancer it was. So no idea why there was cancer in my hip joint. Not a good scenario. Long story short, got to the bottom of it with some more blood tests and it turned out that it was prostate cancer.
Okay.
So my doctors were great. Everything has been going really well. We'll get to all that, I'm sure. But one of the key things that I really wanted when I started my cancer treatment was to stay fit and healthy and strong. And my girlfriend Samantha knew Josh from years ago and figured, all right, let's finally get some personal training,
text message,
which I'd never done before.
Yeah, right.
So I'd never been to a personal trainer. I'd always been fit and healthy and strong and always exercised in the gym, but I'd never got anything
structured. Yep.
And I figured that I needed a bit of finessing to stay fit and healthy and strong, rather than just my usual blunt force trauma in the gym, which was a bit rudimentary.
Explain what you went through though, like the moments you found out. Like, what was the doctors just said this? What's going through your head?
There's a lot of why me very quickly to start with. I'm pretty sure most people who get bad news go through the why me process and go, I didn't do anything wrong. I do the right things fitness-wise, health-wise, all the rest of it. Very quickly though, I had my moments at the start of being, quite dark and a bit depressed and a bit upset. But very quickly I tried to adopt the mindset of why not me? This has happened, deal with it, stay positive, stay strong, battle on.
How did you deal with it?
Mostly I dealt with it by listening to the doctors to start with. That was the key thing, and I didn't kind of let anything slip. I was very lucky in terms of how I got treated by the doctors. So my GP was really great. He referred me to a bone surgeon who specialised in cancers. And he quickly looked at me and went, oh, look, your hip joint really isn't your problem. Your prostate is the problem. So he sent me to a urologist who, that very same day as the appointment, it all happened very quickly. This was all in the space of about a week. So in the space of a week of getting diagnosed to being in a hospital, getting a prostate biopsy to get diagnosed with prostate cancer.
Yeah, wow.
So I was quite confident, and I felt reassured that things were moving really quickly. So that helped mentally.
Yep. What did you do personally? So you listened to the doctors was a big thing for you. What about, obviously if you're not in front of the doctor, there's no one to listen to anymore. What did you go through?
It was... it's actually really... I'm trying to think about it now, because I'll be honest with you, at the moment, I feel great and I've been in a positive mindset for so long. I know to start with, when you get that news, you kind of start to plan your own funeral, to be honest with you. Because it's not a great cancer that I was diagnosed with. It's basically, stage 4 cancer that I'll have to manage for the rest of my life.
Do you know the survival rate of that cancer typically?
Look, no, because I very quickly stopped Googling anything.
Dr. Google's not a great one.
No, Dr. Google's terrible. It would be a great advice for anyone who gets any kind of medical news and advice is to not Google anything, and even my doctors have told me that. Because I'm young, I'm fit, I'm strong, the drugs have responded, I've responded to the drugs really well. There's every chance I'll live for, who knows how long.
Hell of a long time.
Hell of a long time. I try not to set too many goals, but I'm being optimistic at maybe 30 years. I'll be pretty happy with that. So look, it varies, and everyone varies dramatically. So the great advice is don't Dr. Google. That's the first one. Don't listen to the statistics, because the statistics may not apply to you whatsoever.
Of course,
Sorry, I forgot what train of thought we were on there.
So basically, what were you doing?
What was I doing?
Away from the doctors?
Away from the doctors. Mentally, it was tough to start with, because what you're doing at the start of it is trying to figure out how to tell the people who are really closest to you. That was actually one of the more mentally challenging parts and emotionally challenging parts. So I got to obviously my brother first, and then my sister, and then we had to figure out a plan to tell my mum and dad, because they don't live in Adelaide where I am, they live on the Gold Coast. And then all of those people. So that was actually the real mentally challenging part. And then friends who were close to me. It got to the point where I basically stood up in front of the whole team at Channel 9 where I work, because I wanted them to all know too, and I didn't want to have 20 different conversations, because it was becoming emotionally taxing. So I pretty much just stood up on a Friday night. It was the worst Friday night drinks you've ever had, and I told them my cancer story, which was just the easiest way for me to do it.
What kind of response did you get from people?
Oh no, this response overwhelmingly has been amazing in terms of support and positivity and everyone caring. One thing I found really beneficial was at least I was, by the time I'd been diagnosed and I'd dealt with it kind of myself mentally a bit, I'd gotten onto that positivity mindset. And I think people could feed off of my strength and optimism and positivity.
Yeah, okay.
That's what because I didn't want other people to feel worse than I did. You know what I mean? It's you don't want to make people around you feel bad by your medical
It's probably not
news.
good for yourself either, is it?
No.
Everyone else is bad around you.
That's right. So I really I just tried to set the tone of how I'm going to deal with this,
Yeah.
and everyone just jump on board and follow.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, as you said, everyone's been through some sort of thing where you first thought is, why me? Then you sort of go through the phases after that. And now, I've been through nothing like that, even remotely close. But anytime somebody does go, against the plan, most of those books back there will help me get through that first phase and give me ideas to progress forward. Is there anything like that you started doing? Obviously, Josh is probably a big part of that.
Yeah,
I
look,
can't
Something to
later.
focus on.
yeah. Josh comes in a smidge later, but look, I got told early on from the doctors to stay positive. Like my oncologist obviously works in, drugs, in chemotherapy drugs and whatever. That's hardcore evidence-based medicine.
Yep.
But my oncologist told me from the very start, and this was kind of where I was already at. He said, how you deal with this mentally will dictate how you deal with this physically.
Yeah.
So I really like that idea. Look, fortunate that over the past several years, I discovered a lot of Buddhism,
Okay.
to be fair with you. So I'd already learned to meditate over the past several years. I'd already read a lot of Buddhist kind of books and ideas and philosophies. So that really helped a lot in terms of that sort of positivity of embracing life and enjoying life no matter what happened.
What did you do that was the most Buddhist?
Buddhist? On levels of Buddhism.
You got Buddha and then...
Buddha, me, yeah. Just
Where are you?
I'm very far away from the idea of enlightenment, that's for sure. I think it gets tricky because a lot of people don't like talking about it. But one thing that I've always been fascinated about from the Buddhist philosophy is that they are very focused on thinking about your death, your own death. There's an idea in the Buddhist philosophy that I may die today. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not that I will die today or I hope to die today, it's that I may die today. Yeah. There's a chance. You never know. Yeah. We don't know how long we have on the earth. So one thing that I learnt from that is that every day you get a chance to enjoy your life to the absolute fullest.
Makes sense, right?
So you can do it. It doesn't mean you don't think about the future or plan for the future. It's just every day you get the chance to embrace and enjoy your life.
Yep.
And I got that a lot. Cancer gives you a really good perspective on the idea of mortality.
Yep.
That your time, we don't know how finite, but it's going to be finite.
Yep.
So it allows you to embrace life in a far different way than you did before. It's interesting, along the journey I've met so many people, as soon as you say you've got cancer or someone learns about it, there's a whole different realm of people that pop up, and you'll be surprised that people will really want to talk about it. There was a guy I met while selling a pair of boots on Gumtree who realised who I was, and he saw my story in the paper and the like, and he'd been through quite a difficult cancer battle too. And he said to me, you won't understand this yet, but eventually you'll realise that cancer is the best and the worst thing that's ever happened to you.
I've heard that a little bit from different people I know that have cancer.
From a mental point of view and from a perspective point of view and from an embracing life point of view and being happy every day with the simplest of things, cancer has taught me more than anything else could have.
What's your mindset now in compared to before?
I think it's pretty much the same. You mean before cancer?
Yep.
So look, I always worked, before I got cancer, in the last several years, I was working to become a more a calm, embracing of life every day, enjoying the little things, living in the moment, that kind of stuff, with varying degrees of success.
Yep.
Not always. I like to think since I've been diagnosed with cancer, I live in the moment far more and I enjoy things that are very simple far, far better.
Okay.
There are very few things that I now consider a chore, which is really interesting.
Okay.
It's stuff that I don't necessarily like to do, but I like to just go, well, this is pretty good, or it's not that bad.
Right?
It's exactly, this is life. Yeah. It's, whether it's sitting on the couch drinking a coffee and the dog's annoying you to go for a walk or whatever it is, everything's good.
Yep.
That's what I try to focus on. Doesn't always work out that way. We all have our moments, but I think my mindset has become, no matter what I'm doing, I just try to enjoy it much more.
And what about your health habits? Like, what did you do in regards to nutrition? Or again, we'll get to the movement stuff in a sec, so just relax for a bit.
I'm chill, man. I'm chilling here. This is great. This is fantastic.
Yeah, what about like nutrition side of things, hydration, did you ever look into, well, obviously you did the Buddhism side, did you ever go into Eastern medicine and look at different herbal things, or tell us about that?
No, so since before I was diagnosed with cancer, I always like to think I was pretty healthy anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'd stopped drinking about 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I've always eaten well. I've always watched, I know when I'm doing something good or bad, basically. And I try to do the good things a lot more often than the bad things when it comes to nutrition. No, when I got diagnosed with cancer, there wasn't really much to change.
Mm-hmm.
Like there wasn't really anything dramatic I could do. And the advice is that unless your diet is absolutely horrendous, then you shouldn't change anything anyway, because you're about to go through some pretty nasty stuff in terms of the chemo and the like. So you want to just keep everything on an even keel. I've always listened to my doctors in terms of what's going on. I think in terms of medicine, I've never really gone down an alternative Eastern kind of medicine path. I know when I first started talking to my urologist about going through chemotherapy, I said, just give me the full dose, figure out what'll kill me and back it off a little bit, as they say.
Just before I'm dead.
As Jerry Seinfeld says, figure out what'll kill me and back it off a bit.
Yeah.
I wanted the full blast of the good stuff.
Yeah,
so,
And how long was that phase for? Like, how long were you on chemo for before you went to...
what happened next? So after you obviously had the week of stuff, you told your friends and family, what happened next? Go through all of that.
Yeah, so you get to the point of you've gone through all the stuff of, you've been diagnosed, the information, you got to tell everyone close to you. Oddly with my job as well, publicly, on the telly pretty much every day, there was obviously a process of figuring out what I say to people who watch, because it wasn't that I wanted to just, get attention or tell my story for the sake of telling my story, but there's also a scenario of, well, what if I start to look a bit sick while on the TV and people ask questions? So from the very start, I was very open with it. I did a story in the Sunday Mail, basically explaining everything before I started chemotherapy. I think it was actually at the time I started chemo. I just basically spoke to a journal at the Sunday Mail. It was wonderful, and got the story out publicly, which I think was good. And the support was, I can't even explain how amazing it was. People with their own stories of dealing with difficult medical stuff, and just general people wishing me well. Because one thing that especially with my cancer, I was 42 when I was diagnosed. Prostate cancer is not really a 42-year-old's disease. Everyone think of it as an old man's disease, but it's not necessarily. It's just that I'm kind of a bit rare.
A bit rare.
A bit rare in terms of getting it at this age. But it's not uncommon, and you'll learn that very quickly once you get into that zone of having it. So once that was all done, chemotherapy basically was the first port of call. So I started chemotherapy, I think it was late August. I was going to do 6 rounds every 3 weeks. So it sounds daunting.
When 6 at once? Like
no, so you do 6 doses every 3... So every 3 weeks I get a dose.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. So I did that 6 times. The biggest problem, or the biggest thing about chemotherapy was, before you start it, you really don't know what to expect, because you have the horror stories, obviously, of when you hear the term chemotherapy. It can affect people terribly, and it's horrible to see, and you do see it. I went into it with again, I've picked up all these little great pieces of advice from people over the way. When I went to pick up some of my drugs from the pharmacist, she looked at the script that I was getting and looked at me and went, "Have you had these before?" And I went, no, this is all very new. She went, "Okay, wait a second, I'll talk to you." So she gave me the things, the medicine that I needed, and she went through the list of side effects, and she said, "This is what I have to tell you. These are the side effects of these particular drugs. This isn't the chemotherapy drugs, this is other hormone drugs that I had to take. But it applies to everything, I think. These are the list of side effects that you might get. I need to tell you about them, all the rest of it." She said, "Read them, screw them up and throw them away. Because you'll talk yourself into them if you focus on them."
Yeah.
So I came up with the term, "I don't do side effects."
Yeah.
So that's what I went into the mindset with chemotherapy. If I don't do side effects. I just wasn't. I really was not focused on that at all. I was focused on strength and staying positive and the drugs working and killing the cancer. So my first dose of chemotherapy, I was determined. It took a while. So it was on a Wednesday morning. I got there about, I think it was 8 o'clock in the morning, and they have to go through quite a process of blood tests and being hydrated with fluid and all the rest of it before you actually get the chemo drug into you. And it went okay. Took about 4 hours in total process, but I was determined on the first day of chemotherapy that I was going to go to work afterwards. So I did, because I didn't want cancer, for lack of a better term, fucking up my life.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to let it win. I was going to treat it with respect and beat it, but I wasn't going to just submit to it for the next 6 months.
Wow.
So that was my process the whole way through it, and luckily it kind of worked.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, chemo was not fun necessarily, like it would make me feel a bit tired and from time to time, but I think just from a mental point of view, I pushed on for every one of them just to feel as good as I possibly could.
Do you still remember that list? Basically, the side effects?
Nah.
No?
Nah.
So you couldn't say if you had any of them or not?
Nah, not really.
Wow.
There was a whole list of things.
That's
You know,
fantastic.
the obvious ones of losing your hair and stuff, which I didn't. No, I don't really. I never really focused on them at all. Because
Fantastic.
if you, the one they talk about is lethargy, like being tired.
Yeah.
And if you think about that, that's the big one. If you think about that too much, you'll talk yourself into being tired, even if you're not.
Yeah.
So, I feel a bit tired, I better go lie down. No, I just was determined not to do it. Like, don't get me wrong, I slept when I needed to sleep and I ate when I needed to eat, but I didn't go, well, I just had chemo, I better go and lie on the couch for the next 12 hours.
Yeah, you went back to work.
I just went back to work. So I just went into it from that point of view.
So you worked the whole way through?
Didn't miss a day.
Wow.
Never had a sick day.
No sick days.
Still haven't had a sick day.
Banking them up.
Channel 9
Channel 9,
Channel 9, exactly. It's a lot of sick days
It's a big
there.
holiday coming up.
Yeah, but I just didn't want to take one because it felt like you were admitting defeat.
Yeah.
That was my theory on it.
That's fantastic. That's big credit to you for that one. Wow.
A huge component of the entire like as a situation or the story or what's happened has been the mental component, which is massive. From the oncologist to the pharmacist to yourself, to everything was designed. I would say design was kind of engineered to be a positive. You know what I mean? Like, okay, cool. This is how we're going to work. This is what it's going to be like.
Yep.
And just goes to show that side of things does have a part in how you perform. You know, it's massive. It's massive.
Mentally is what has
Yeah.
drove me to keep going to see you each week and all the rest of it. You know what I mean? So, it can't be understated in terms of going in with a positive, strong mindset because it's tough. Stuff might get tough. You know, people do react differently to drugs, and it can have an impact. But if you go into it from a position of feeling bad, and this is what the oncologist said to me afterwards. He literally said, "I see people like you who come in strong and positive, and I unfortunately see people who do well, and I see people who come in with a difficult or negative mindset, and they don't do as well. And people have different scenarios going on, so it's not to be critical of that, but it's such a major thing if you can get into a positive zone.
It's unbelievably fantastic that all the medical staff are also saying, be positive about it. Don't let your head get in the way of your recovery and your procedures. That's
It makes
Amazing.
It makes a big difference.
Because as you said, you wanted to trust them and listen to them, and if they're backing up by saying that, you're like, well, shit, I've got to do it.
Correct. Yeah,
That's
it.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Remember Bruce Lipton's Biology of Belief back in the day? Have you ever read that?
No.
Oh, it's basically from 2009, I reckon. I first heard of it. I think I've got it at home somewhere, but it's one that Donald recommended. Came through for checking. It's basically the biology of belief.
I
Exactly.
remember Donald talking about
Exactly
it.
the same stuff, like how your beliefs and how your ideas and how your emotional state affects you physically, and how that can be altered and benefited and whatever. So it's,
Is that the snowflake guy, or is that Otto Warburg?
I think that's Otto Warburg
Okay.
from memory.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're just reminiscent.
No, that's right. But it's very interesting because even without being prompted, I've met a lot of people who've battled different cancers over the last 6-8 months. And someone said to me, they said, oh, do you do the visualization of when you're getting chemo? And I said, oh, I actually do. She said, so did I. So you basically visualize the chemo working on the cancer.
Yep.
And people do it in different ways. There was one time when I did it, I was imagining it was like a Star Wars game or a Star Wars ship going through shooting the cancer.
Yep.
So you do it in all sorts of ways of visualizing the cancer being destroyed. It's I think it's very good for yourself mentally, but hey, if it has a physical benefit as well, roll with it.
And the snowflake, for context, do you want to explain the snowflake thing, or do you want me to do it?
So I actually think it was Bruce Lipton, but anyway, regardless of that, there's a guy out there who
It might have been actually.
did a test with snowflakes. He put a snowflake in a dish, and he labelled the dish with a certain word. One word was, I think he did 3 different types. One was hate, one was love, and one was just like a control disc. And he put them in the freezer and left them for a while, months, weeks, whatever it was. Pulled them back out, and then looking at them afterwards, the hate one was this ugly-looking, deformed, non-symmetrical flake. The control was random, whatever it was, and the love one was perfectly symmetrical, a little bit bigger. It changed to look like a pretty snowflake. And so he was going on the thing of the way you speak to yourself, your belief system will create, I guess, a pretty snowflake.
Because he would look at them daily. But it'd be interesting to get that actual story up.
Yeah, I have to find it.
It's a really cool one. But basically, same sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then so then from chemo, then what happened?
Okay, from chemo.
Because we'll get to. I can add all the training stuff in.
Yeah, we can talk about that when we get to my current day, the end.
Yeah.
So after chemo, I went and had another big scan because they want to see what the hell is going on to see if the chemo works. So I had blood tests along the way, which indicated some good stuff, and the hip joint pain had started to ease quite dramatically during the chemo, which was another good sign that the cancer wasn't growing, or at least, it wasn't getting worse. So after the chemo, I had another big scan, which indicated there was a lot less cancer than there was before, which was really good. It was quite small. And I also went and saw, this is the other thing that I didn't learn beforehand, but I'm probably glad I didn't. So the hip joint was not great. It had fractured a little bit. It was a tiny little fracture, but there was quite a bit of cancer in the left hip joint. And I didn't know this beforehand, but if it didn't heal itself, it was basically going to be a hip replacement.
Correct.
I didn't know that there was no minor hip surgery. There's only major hip surgery, apparently.
Yeah.
So
I also didn't tell you that.
Yeah, no. So I didn't know. So luckily, after I'd finished chemotherapy, I had to do radiotherapy. But before that, I needed to go and see my bone surgeon again to see what he thought. And he luckily said to me, mate, there's nothing I can do for you. It's all scarred up as good as it could possibly scar up. There's no cancer in there. It's as strong as it was. You're good to go. Yeah. Which is a pretty good result, given the other result was, some sort of weird hip replacement, which is not a great scenario from what I've heard. Not at my age, especially. So that worked out really well. And good advice as well from another doctor, because I like to skydive. I said, so he basically said to me, you can pretty much do whatever you want. And I said, yeah, but what does whatever you want mean?
Can I jump out of a plane?
Can I jump out of the plane? And he went, well, why would you want to anyway? But he said, look, there's no reason why that hip is any weaker than the left hip is any weaker than the right hip. So you can do whatever you want. In his words, just don't fuck it up. Which is good
Science!
Which is exactly. Which is good advice for life generally.
Yeah.
Do whatever you want. Just don't fuck it
That
up.
was on the last day of his master's degree, his PhD. They went, you know what? The last lesson is make sure you tell your patients, do whatever you want, just don't fuck it up.
And
Now
it's like,
you're a
there's
doctor.
one question. What are you going to tell me? Oh, fuck, I knew this one. Yeah. So had the radio. The radio went through.
So radiotherapy was. Look, again, radiotherapy is very different to chemotherapy.
Can you go through the details of that? Because
Yes.
As we were obviously going through our training and we would talk about it, I learned a lot of shit that I didn't know beforehand. So can you go a few details of that you're comfortable with?
Yeah, I think most people understand the chemotherapy process. It's a lot simpler. You sit in a chair, you get a drip, and the chemotherapy drips into you, the drug. And it's all slow, and it happens once every 3 weeks. Fine for me. It was
Quick question. Do you feel it?
No. Some people can have a reaction to it, but if you're having a reaction to it, it happens instantly.
Okay.
So if you don't have the reaction, then no, you don't feel a thing.
Okay, cool.
No.
Sorry. Continue.
Nothing at all. Radiotherapy is once a day
Once a day.
for 20 days in a row.
Yeah.
They give you weekends off.
They give you weekends off. That's right. They do give
Cancer
you
gets a little
weekends off.
holiday on the weekend.
That's right. We'll see you Monday morning.
So that's right. So for 4 weeks, Monday to Friday, I had radiotherapy. Now, over the course of my process, I've been quite open about it. The problem with radiotherapy on the prostate and the hip joint is that it's in the area around the bladder and bowel. So you need to turn up ready to go to get into the machine at a very specific time, like 12 minutes past 8, with a full bladder and an empty bowel. It's really quite difficult to coordinate at times, to be honest with you. The full bladder thing, so every morning, it's a mental battle again, because every morning at a specific time, you basically have to feel like you're busting to go to the toilet. But you can't, because you need to get the life-saving treatment.
Correct.
So going to the toilet, which seems like the simplest thing in the world, just to take a pee, can't happen because you need the life-saving treatment. So it is actually quite unpleasant at times.
And you've also got to go to the toilet and do number 2, but can't do number 1.
So you've got to make sure that you've finished the number 2s and that's all done before you fill your bladder up. So
it's a lot more of a process than
it is.
being there at 12 past 8.
Exactly right. So
why the time? What's the?
It's just because you're in the machine for like 5 minutes, so they just slot people in really quickly. So the process of being in the machine to get the radiotherapy,
So
which
there's no
is
science behind 18 minutes past.
No.
No, that's just
that's
one
just
at a time.
it. So there's one person. So it basically just slots appointments really quickly, and you will get an appointment which says 12 minutes past 8.
Yeah, right.
Just because that's the way it works. Because you're in what looks like a big giant cylindrical X-ray type machine for about less than 5 minutes.
Yeah, right. Okay.
But it's the process of getting there ready to go which is difficult. So it started off okay. You know, you get into the routine of doing every day, full bladder, empty bowel, get in the machine, they zap you, see you again tomorrow. And they were all lovely. They were, the people who treat you have been terrific for me. It started off fine, but doing this every morning and then going to work and then trying to live a normal life and stuff, it got a bit of a grind. It was the last week when I said I don't do side effects, but it was the last week when it was. Problem is, the reason that you need a full bladder and an empty bowel, because it basically moves things out of the way so they can get a clear shot at the prostate and zap you the right way to kill the cancer.
So radio is very acute.
Yes.
Chemo is very general.
Yeah, chemo's the blunt instrument which blasts you. Radiotherapy was very directly targeting the cancer on my prostate. And hip joint. So they need a good shot, and the way to do it is to have a full bladder and an empty bowel, and it gives you the way to get into it. But inadvertently, they will miss a little bit with the radiotherapy. It's just the way it goes, and you start to feel a little bit less than normal especially in the bladder region. So for the last week of radiotherapy, I think I felt like I needed to go to the toilet every 5 minutes.
Oh, wow.
It's like having a urinary tract infection, I think.
Yeah.
And
And it hurts, and it zaps you. It's radiating a part of the body you don't want radiated.
Wow.
So I did get side effects. I said I don't do side effects, but I did get some. There was really no avoiding that one. It was just purely a matter of science, blasting and burning a little bit of that. It cleared up pretty quickly and everything went better. But I'll be honest with you, I can't underplay how much more difficult radiotherapy was than chemotherapy. Mm-hmm. It was that every day for 4 weeks, and just the kind of
and things would come up that were like be pushed back, or the machine didn't work.
One day the machine didn't work. Luckily they'd sort of called me a little bit in advance, but you kind of base your day around getting ready, or the morning at least, getting ready to go into the machine. Yeah. And then one day the machine had broken down. So you're kind of like, okay, I'll try and hold everything in.
What do I do?
Yeah, what do I do? I'll just wait around and then.
So you're still holding on to it?
Oh, I had to. I had to stop. Okay. So yeah, it was a balancing act of how much water you drank and when you drank it. Yeah. Right. To be honest with you, it started off with being told drink a litre of water. I think it was either an hour or 45 minutes before your appointment. Mm-hmm. And of course, it varies for everyone physically as to how much water your bladder holds, to be honest with you. Yeah. And I realised that my bladder did not hold a litre of water for 45 minutes. That was not going to work. So we got into the balance of what I needed and when. And every now and then you'd turn up and you'd get into the machine and they'd do a little x-ray to make sure. And I went, no, you got to drink some more water. Yeah. Come back in 5 minutes. All right. So it was quite a process. Yeah. So I got to the end of it though, which was good. And then at the end of the radiotherapy, I had another blood test, because by the time I had radiotherapy, the doctor told me there's no point in doing an actual physical scan because there'll be so little cancer there that we won't even see it anyway.
Because the radiotherapy kills it.
Because the radiotherapy basically blasts it all. Yeah. So I now just have a 3-monthly blood test to monitor my PSA level.
And how long ago was that process?
I finished chemotherapy on the 9th of December. I then started radiotherapy on January 7, I think.
This year?
Yes, this year. Okay. And then 4 weeks of that. So I finished radiotherapy in early February.
Yeah, wow.
Yep. And then it was blood tests. And so PSA, prostate specific antigen, is what basically dictates how much prostate cancer you have in your body, has thankfully consistently dropped the entire time since I was diagnosed. So to put it in perspective as well with that number is when I was diagnosed, my PSA was 38. Mm-hmm. For someone my age, it should be basically 0, ideally.
Yeah, wow.
So, or 0.5 or something like that. So I was high. Yeah. But then it quickly dropped. And so now I think my last reading, my PSA, that was about 2 months ago, almost 2 months ago exactly, that was 1.4 or 1.8, something like that. So it had dropped a lot. And as long as that number keeps dropping or stays where it is...
So you're due again next month then, right?
Yep. I have another PSA test in May.
I'll be looking for an update then.
Yep.
And then
what? For those zeros.
Exactly.
Yeah, for the zeros.
000 is what they're looking for pretty much, yeah.
And then what's the following continuance? Because there is a continuance that you have to do now moving forward. So outside of just testing, you are on like medications and that kind of stuff.
Here we go. This is where a lot of the training comes in and stuff like that. Because one of the things that prostate cancer basically feeds off of testosterone. Mm-hmm. So because of the type of cancer that I've got, I'll never actually be cured of it.
It feeds on testosterone.
So it feeds on testosterone. So basically,
Yep.
So basically, they now that they've pretty much killed all the cancer, it's still there, kind of. So what they do is they give you a hormone treatment, which basically rips out all the testosterone from your body to not feed the cancer.
Wow.
So,
how do you deal with that?
Androgen.
How do I deal with that? What do you mean?
As in, like, as a strength coach who
we can get into that.
Delivers training.
So it doesn't sound fun, and it's not. So one thing you can Google for yourselves the effects of testosterone treatment and androgen therapy. It's not hard. But one thing that so there's not many fun effects of it at all. one thing that the urologist said to me, and my doctor's a great, but it was a great motivator too. He said, because of the lack of testosterone, you'll lose muscle and put on weight. And that was the greatest motivator I could have had, because I'm like, no, I'm not. So that's, and what I quickly realised and discovered and read is that even if you don't have any testosterone in you, as long as you keep maintaining and pushing, you can still stay pretty fit and strong.
Yep.
But as soon as you stop without testosterone, your gains will fall off really quickly. That's my basic understanding of it.
Yeah, you don't want to lose those gains.
No, I don't want to lose the gains. That's right. So look, I'm at a significant battle of strength and muscle building and the like. But in terms of, again, mentally, just pushing through, I don't really feel any side effects either. Once again, I don't do side effects.
Yeah, nice.
And I don't think I've noticed any particularly. So, yeah. So that's the next. That's, to be honest with you, that's the rest of my life is androgen therapy.
Yep. Okay.
So yeah.
So this pretty much brings you now to meeting Josh, starting training.
Yeah,
yes.
Which
So
was before chemo.
I learned all these things. Yeah, I learned all these things basically when I was diagnosed, and thought, okay, this doesn't sound great.
Yeah.
So I needed some other help. You know, I've gotten the good drugs. I needed some physical help as well. So my girlfriend Samantha knew Josh from years ago.
I think it was about 10 years since I heard from Sam.
Yep. And she must have obviously seen you on the Facebook still and knew you did
I have
stuff.
no idea. Like,
I don't know.
honestly,
She never mentioned you before, to be honest with you. So I didn't know anything about it. But I did obviously need to figure out best ways, because I was also going through chemotherapy at the time. I had a hip joint that was fractured when I first met you, so I couldn't do lots of stuff either. So I needed to figure out ways of lifting weights, staying strong, because I got told you got to exercise as well. Yeah. So there's a lot of factors going on in terms of why I went to Sam organised for me to get in touch with you.
It's hectic.
To train. So yeah, so you're on a bit of a process of I knew what to do in terms of going to the gym. Yeah. But I'd not really done anything. Push. Yeah, I never had a plan. Yeah. I just turn up and go, right, I'll lift these today. Yeah.
Beach muscles. Did you have any preconception ideas on what a trainer was? Like, is there any reason you didn't get one before? I mean, you probably knew what you were doing it somewhat, but did you go, did Sam say, oh, would you go see this trainer? And you're like, trainer. I don't know.
No, at that point, Sam had obviously told me about you and what you did, so I was like, oh, okay, this sounds very specific. Yeah. And it's not that I never respected what PTs did or all the rest of it. It's just that I'm not going to be in the Olympics.
Yep.
I go to the gym because I enjoy it. I kind of know what I'm doing. You know, I ride my push bike a lot.
Very active.
I stayed fit and healthy. It was why I did it, and it was good stress release mentally. So I just didn't think I needed it. But then obviously you get given some hardcore medical news and then some really unpleasant drugs, and you go, oh, hang on a second, I reckon I can get some real benefit here. Yeah. That was basically my thought process in it, because I didn't need the motive. Like, some people might go to a PT because they need the motivation. I never needed the motivation. But what you can learn from someone is just techniques that I'd never done before, and you know, number of reps, number of sets, all that sort of stuff.
It was the next level.
Even holding your tongue to the roof of your mouth, so you don't strain your neck.
I went deep. Shit. Like,
did you bring out the totem pole? Or?
I didn't bring the totem pole out. No, it wasn't. There was enough happening in that period of time that I didn't need to bring the totem pole out. It was
Yeah. So I like to think of myself as a bit of a test crash dummy. Because I also went along and there's a wonderful place at Flinders University called Health to Go, where I worked with a master's student in physiology. And he was terrific, and we did I like to test myself and push myself. So we did a VO2 max test and all sorts of stuff.
Did you ask his name?
Oh, I can't think of his name now. So Sam. Were you at Flinders?
Yeah. Yep.
It was Sam.
I've got
I
that
can't remember
email.
his surname. Yeah, I've got it.
Yeah.
Anyway, he was great, and I like to see the numbers. So I did a VO2 max test three times I think during chemo, just to see how I was going. And luckily, it stayed the same each time in terms of VO2 max, and all of my wattage actually went up a little bit.
Wow,
which was good.
Fantastic.
So, and it actually went up, and I did another one earlier this year. My wattage had gone up a little bit higher as well. VO2 max was about the same, even though my hemoglobin was way low. So if you're a bit
real fuck you cancer.
So if you're a bit of a nut when it comes to the numbers, and I was as well, is they said, oh, your hemoglobin's so low, you're on the verge of us not really letting you do the test. But I was just in the range. But my numbers all stayed as good or just a smidge better.
Up high.
So that really screwed up the master students.
Yeah. So
what is going on here?
and again, I put it down to being a bit of a mental thing too, because I could see the numbers on the screen while I'm doing the actual test, and going, okay, well, I'm going to beat them.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that I was just mentally going, okay, I can do better than this. I can do better.
I did a VO2 max test once, didn't I, Adam?
That turned out horribly.
Murph went to test me for his. It was end of year assessment. Something was as a
preparation for
your
final
exam.
exams. Yeah.
It was like, come and do a VO2 max test. And I was like, all right, cool. Now I don't like shit in my mouth at the best of times, right? And so it's like, here's a treadmill, and I'm like going for warm up, whatever. Puts the mask in my mouth, so I got that thing. I'm
Did you use the blue mask?
No, luckily, I used the blue mask.
The full mask, yeah. So this one was, I had to like bite down on this fucking thing, and this thing was attached to my head, right? And I'm running, and I'm almost vomiting because I'm like I can feel it. And I'm like, all right, I finally managed to get through it. And I'm gonna chuck, and that's all good. Sweat's like, sweat like drool's like dripping down here. And I'm like, this is not fun. And I'm getting at it, and I'm feeling good, like here's the numbers, whatever, and then the mask just breaks on me, right? Drops down, and I'm like, I don't know what fuck is this supposed to happen or not, and then like, so that breaks, and the next thing that I know, the instructor's next to me, and she was like, shut the machine down, and I was like, they shut it down, and I was like, what was that, like, I didn't even get to find out my bloody numbers.
No. You've been through like half the test, no result.
And I left, and I was like, what a waste of 3 hours.
If anyone does want to does a VO2 max in the future, they now use the blue mask.
Yeah.
But it's old school, and I've done one 4 years ago. It's like a snorkel. It's like a snorkel piece in your mouth, trying to breathe at maximum capacity through a snorkel.
You got to bite down the whole time.
It doesn't work.
And you're trying to breathe through. It was next level. So when he's coming in saying about like this is me VO2 max, I was like, oh, it sounds like you actually got to complete this.
It was great.
Difference between undergrad and masters.
Well, fair. That's very true.
So when I got to see you, I was the crash test dummy. So I always was interested in what people thought about me when I turned up and went, well, I'm going to do this. I've got to go through this rather in terms of cancer treatment, but I want to do this as well.
As in like training wise.
Yeah, training wise.
I hadn't heard from Sam for like 10 years. Alright, so I got a text. I can't remember what day it was, but I got a text. I remember we caught up on a Friday, and I was like, "Hey Josh, basically like, quick chat about I got some something I want to talk to you about training wise. This is kind of happened. I don't think I was given the full context of it. I didn't actually know right, what the go was, and can we meet up for coffee?" And I said, "Yep, like 10 o'clock on a Friday, Mr. Sunshines. You'll find me there." So got there, like I didn't know Will, and obviously Sam was there, and we're talking. And as just starts to talk through things, I'm thinking, this isn't my specialty. I know how to training, and I know physiology, and I know how to do this stuff, and the hormonal response, whatever, but I know nothing about prostate cancer. And you need to tell me everything, talk to me about your nutrition, your recovery, your training. I had to find out everything basically about Will at that time, and work out where he was at, so I could work out what I could do, you know. And then obviously we went through like the hip issue, and we went through this, and I was like, what have you been told you can do? What have you been told you can't do? You know, the full spectrum. And then I went for like a weekend, and I just PubMed, articles, shit. And this is the thing that came up, is that, you know, being an anomaly in regards to the statistics, you know, statistically speaking, majority of like men who get prostate cancer are 70 to 75 plus, you know, and there are, you know, genetic linkages, and there are other things that can be about it, but all the studies come through on that demographic. Right, and I'm not dealing with that demographic. I'm dealing with someone who is fit, who has got muscle mass. Like Will came in sports, right? Who has got muscle mass, who understands the need for the training, who currently is in the gym, who currently is aerobically fit. You know, all these things that are like, these are not the demographic that you're generally getting. And these are the studies on one, and then these are the guys we're doing studies on, and these are their outcomes. But I'm like, well, same things with the symptoms of the drugs. I can't take them on board because I'm not dealing with that, right? So need to understand. And now I had to take it through to the next stage, going, all right, cool, well, what does the drug do? Like, we're looking at chemo at the moment. This was the first stage. You know, get through that. You know, what does the drug do, and what can that, from a scientific perspective, what does that actually cause? Because there's generally a specific outcome between input and output of drugs, right? Panadol, pain relief. You know, what I mean, there's that. So I was like, all right, forget the symptomatic response. What I might get from Will as a person. What is the drug response? And these are things I need to look for. And these are things I need to take on board when we're looking at working with him. And the big thing was obviously lethargy. If I can keep your energy production up, right, you're going to be able to then live life, and that then feeds into the positivity side of things. Because that was a big thing that came through in that first meeting was, you know, I don't do symptoms. I'm just going to deal with it. We're going to do this. And I was like, sweet. So straight away, I knew that when we train, we're not going to bring it up. You know, how you feeling in regards to life in general and how's the shit, but here's what we get to. It's not going to be like, tell me about this or tell me about that. But like, through everything, we didn't bring it up. You know?
No, and we never, and if when we did, you wouldn't speak about it from a point of view, or we wouldn't speak, and I never did, was I can't do this because of.
It was never in there.
Yeah.
And that was a conscious decision within the training environment I wanted to create for Will.
Yeah.
You know, because that's how he's come in. That's how we're going to continue that. And if I don't provide that for that, even for that 1 hour a week, and I say something, or someone says something in the gym, or Will thinks something that doesn't feed into that mentality, that mindset, that one thing could then be like a little brainworm that stays on board. We can't have that because we're looking at literally life and death right now. You know, and that was the big thing that got to me was that, all right, everything has to be done to the gold standard of what it can be done to. You know, it's not just like come in and we'll just do a fucking pyramid set or whatever. It's like, I need to now understand how we're going to work through that process, including the environment we create, including what we talk about, including the exercise selection. The exercise selection was the last thing I need to do, you know. So going through from that perspective of, okay, what are the side effects of the drugs? What do we need to look for? Obviously, it's like muscle mass decrease, lethargy, hormonal changes, all this kind of other shit that comes up, right? Cool, awesome. I'm looking at lethargy and muscle mass, all right? So in order to do this, we need to make sure your output is high. Right? In order to increase muscle mass, we need to make sure your output is high. So my aim was, you know what? If the scientific stuff coming out is saying that effects of the drug are muscle mass, I want you to gain muscle. That's what I want you to do. Right?
That was the train I was on too. It was like, nah, bugger this, I'm going to put on muscle.
We can get swole through this process, you know? And so it was from everything that I took, like, let's say I spent hours on fucking PubMed. Everything that I'd then written down.
PubMed is not a pub.
No.
That's what I was thinking.
So PubMed is the published medical articles.
Yeah. It's all peer-reviewed journals.
Peer-reviewed journals and shit.
Science, lots of science.
And so I spent hours on that, and I'm like, all right, cool. Now I have an understanding of what the external looks like, what the framework is going to look like, what I need to then do. Then it was a matter of, all right, cool. Nutrition seems fine. You're training by yourself another 2 times a week, I think it was, as well as seeing me. So you're doing your heavy sets, and I didn't change nothing with what we was doing because he knows what he's doing and he enjoys what he's doing. All right, you keep doing that. If you need to modify, like you got niggers in your lats or your calves or whatever, modify that. Here's how to modify that, but I'm not going to touch that either. All right, we're going to focus on what this looks like here. And so then we had to account for the hip. All right, so he had 20 degrees of flexion in the hip, and he couldn't do any more, no more than that. But I knew that in order to ensure the hip is strong after that 18-week period, the 6 chemos over 3 weeks at a time, after that 18-week period, the hip needs to be loaded in that time, but it can't be loaded further than 20 degrees either way, like flexion or extension. All right, so there was this range that we had. All right, awesome. So now when I'm looking at designing the program, I'm going, upper body, we can do anything. Upper body and core, we can do anything. Now, when I'm looking at loading the hip, I'm starting to analyze, all right, and assess that we need to load hamstrings, we need to load calves, we need to load the glutes, and then we also need to really focus on loading the obliques, and then in through the core musculature to stabilize the hip. And that was a big thing that we always did, is that in the sessions, we're still going to work your hip, and we're still going to work your leg. But I'm not going to tell you we're doing that because you've been told not to do that, all right? And you've been told that, you know, we'll stay away from that. But isometrically, we can. So I can put you in a 20-degree position, 20 degrees flexion, and we can do some rows. We can do some bent over stuff. We can do on your back on the floor some pressing. You know, I can get your legs up in the air, and you can hold that there while we do some upper body stuff, or while we do some core stuff. So a lot of stuff that we did, like you said, you hadn't seen before. You know?
No, there was lots of stuff. Yep.
Yeah, and that was designed to basically ensure that we're getting tension into the hip from top and from bottom to stabilize that. Because my goal was, I don't want you to go through hip replacement. You know, the cancer stuff will be sorted through the drugs and the radio. Right, the muscle mass is my job, and the energy production output is my job. But hip stability, that's my job. You're not going to do that by yourself. So then it was a lot of that, like isometric holds of the hamstrings, a lot of lower core stuff. A lot of landmine work as well. So there was some issues with like wheels and neck and traps and shoulders and whatnot that didn't necessarily affect his output. But I wanted to go, right, we need to get maximal load upper body to ensure that muscle mass continues, to ensure that the lethargy is down. So I need to load upper body as much as I can. You know, and obviously the hip and the isometrics of the hip and core to the extent we can without overloading. So I was like, in order to get him to be able to push heavy and lift heavy and row heavy, got to ensure that your neck is sorted, your shoulders are sorted. There's a few niggles you have to work through at the same time as well. And it was like, all right, how does this program then look? You know, and for like, I would do 3 week cycles, I think it was 2 week cycles, where we do the same session for 2 weeks, and the next session we change it up. Same for 2 weeks, let's change it up. But it's all focused around upper body heavy as possible with support, oblique integration in through the spiral sling.
Dead bugs,
a lot of dead bugs, a lot of like B stance work, a lot of this stuff, a lot of quadruped rows, you know, so there's no load on the hip there. And then from that it was like the isometrics and whatnot, and then we keep in that same format, but as we move forward, now we're doing like max reps here, we're doing like max weight. We kind of stay within the rep ranges of like 4 to 8. We start at 8, move down to 6, then to 4, and then we change up a little bit. And as you progress through the chemo, it was more of like, all right, I want to push you harder now, you know, because it's like an overload thing, you know what I mean? Like it's not like we take Panadol, you take 3 or 4 doses, and the effects start to come on, you know. Right? So it's kind of like that over the 3 week period. What's going to happen? You better, then you go again, and you go again over the course of 18 weeks. Things are going to start to change. So as we got towards the end of that, I was like, all right, here's what the program has to look like now to ensure that you were getting the max out of it. Now, when radio occurred, that's when things started to get a little bit skew with, because it was daily, because, you know, we had those issues with like booking in and times or not. It was a little bit more difficult to get in, and there were obviously side effects at the time, so we had to kind of manage that a little bit more. With chemo, it was easy because we knew it was on a Wednesday, so we could train. We could train the Tuesday beforehand, you know, and you still get your session in that week. Radio was a bit more difficult, you know, and by that time, like once you went to the the bone surgeon and he was like, hips as solid as it can be, you can do what you want. I was like, cool, I'm gonna give it 2 weeks before we start loading legs a little bit more, you know. But I knew then at that point, I was like, I've done my job, you know, like that's exactly what I wanted, because as soon as you go through radio and we're trying to give you a bit more loading of muscle mass and increasing that kind of output, you need to be able to load the legs. Biggest muscles in the body, I don't want to eliminate them. So from that point, when you come in and said, so do whatever I want, I was like, all right, cool. Within reason, we're going to do some stuff. And then from there, it was just a matter of like progressing. And now at a point where like today we do just like full leg workout. Yeah. You know, keeping it up. Because like I said, Will was quite comfortable doing his own upper body work at the gym. You know, so now it's matter of, right, how do we continue that and keep that going, and keep you progressing where you're at. And I think it was after chemo you actually gained muscle mass. Yeah,
exactly. That was the key part of it, is to keep pushing. Yeah. For me, is that, you know, I might have got a bit extreme, but extreme is good.
Extreme is good.
Extreme is good, but it's just that idea of just continually pushing through, because it was going to pay off entirely, because you know, regardless, chemo was going to end, and I didn't want to get to the end of chemo and after 18 weeks of horrible drugs and not doing any exercise, and then the hormone therapy, and then trying to get fit again. That would have been worse.
Yeah, it was a lot harder to get started.
Exactly. So and the doctors told me, you just keep exercising, do whatever you do, and just always do something every day. Yeah. And so when they said go to the gym, I probably got a bit excited. but it was that idea of just keeping what I had, and even aiming to build muscle. Aim high made a big difference.
Made a massive difference.
Yeah.
You know.
When Will walked in for the first session, like you probably did an assessment session or what in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
When you walked in for the first actual training session, were you shocked? Like, shit, he can actually lift, he can move, he looks good. Obviously, you already knew he had cancer or what at that point. Did you expect a weakness, or did you go, no, I'm just going to go straight in for the kill?
We didn't do an assessment session because I was like, time is of the essence now, and I'm gonna assess as we move. Obviously, I assessed him at Mr. Sunshine, so I could see what's happening upper body. And it was more like, okay, the first session is a training session, you know, and here's what we're going to do and why. And there was a bit of testing with the hip and what positions and where you can get to. And after that, I was like, all right, you can go to here, that's fine.
Yep.
But it was more like straight in, we got to work hard. Like, you know, you're here to work hard, we're going to work hard.
Yeah.
So I guess the question is, did he surprise you? Did you sort of stand back at the end of the session and go like this dude's, he's strong already, he's good to go?
So the first session, when we walked in and obviously like had like singlet on and stuff, I was like, this guy's staunch as. You had seen it on the news. And the news just see nice little suit sitting at a desk, and I was like, okay, this guy's strong, let's get some shit happening.
That must have been the first time I saw Will. Like, probably saw you in the gym for maybe a month before I found out that you had cancer, and Josh was like, yeah, he's got cancer. I'm like, Will? Is it the dude that just left? Like, yeah, like, you do not look like the typical cancer patient.
No, that's one thing that, like, again, I never wanted to look sick. I didn't want to feel sick. Hopefully that came through.
Yeah.
Is that, again, my job, Channel 9 on the telly, I think people that knew me and people that knew my mum and dad and stuff, and they'd call up my girlfriend or my mum and dad, and they go, he doesn't look sick. And so I started to joke, and I shouldn't joke, but you have to keep the humour going and things. I said, yeah, it's like fake cancer. Yeah, people will accuse me of having some kind of fraud going on because I just never wanted to look sick, and luckily I didn't. I never lost my hair, not more than I lost anyway. I was going a bit bald as it was.
I feel
but I just never started to look sick, so luckily it didn't really happen. So yeah, that was a good positive side effect, is that I never got to look.
Like I said, the bigger one was the mindset. You know, creating. It was harder for me. I wouldn't say harder. It was more of a concern of mine and more of an awareness of mine to create an environment through the words that I spoke rather than the exercise that we did. The exercises, easy. I can do that. You know what I mean? But that, ensuring that everything around that time, like even asked you, like what type of music you like, what do you want on, all that kind of stuff had to be on point.
Yeah.
This is life and death now, and there is a lot of significant issues here. And so the first when I was like doing the researching, I was like, fuck, and like that, you know that meme when there's like all like equations and shit happening, it was like me at the computer, it was ridiculous. You know, and so I was like, cool, once I understood that, I can interpret that, and then I awesome, exercise easy, that environment, you know. So, and then we walked in, obviously I had the background, and it's got muscle mass, you know, so it's alright, cool, we can utilize that, I can push harder than what I may have assumed. Like for me, it was I had the exercise already ready to go, I had the sets and rep schemes ready to go. I was like, okay, what weight are we doing? You know, how are we gonna approach that?
How much is that a promotion for exercise right now? You know, going through what you did and exercise being a massive part of getting you through all this.
Oh, you can't understate it, and even the doctors will tell you that you have to keep moving, you have to keep staying fit, you have to be active. But also, another story I like to tell is that I did a trip to Nepal. I think it was a few years ago, 2018, and I used to go hiking every morning up in the hills, and I literally would go for a 1 to 2 hour hike, and then I'd go to the gym afterwards. But I used to wear one of the oxygen deprivation masks, and it looks pretty weird. It's the whole baying scenario. Whether it does any good or not, I don't know. Mentally, I think it does you a lot of good. Physically, whatever. There's different things I've read about it, but I used to wear it, and I felt like I was working hard. And someone said to me, "Oh, what are you training for?" And I couldn't be bothered explaining, to be honest with you. So this bloke who saw me, "What are you training for?" And I just said, "Life." So I think one of the critical things is that you don't know what's going to pop up. So when it comes to exercise, if you just stay fit and strong and healthy all of the time, it allows you to take on whatever is going to pop up. Hopefully nothing ever happens to you that is bad medically, but when it does, if you are fit and strong and healthy, you're in a much better position to fight it. But then continuing on through it, the idea of staying physically active, and I think it helps the body generally.
Mm-hmm.
I just couldn't underplay enough how important it was for me to stay strong physically, because I think that helped feed the idea of staying strong mentally, and one fed off the other.
Yep.
And for the final thing today, I was going to go. You got something?
I'm doing, but
You go. No, you go. I got like a wrap up one.
It's also a final thing, so we'll go mine, then you can wrap it up.
You go yours, and then I'll wrap it up.
What would be your biggest 1-2 learnings from this whole process?
Okay, firstly, the thing I learnt the most is that we think we're in control of our lives, but we're not. There are small little things that we think we control every day, but you have absolutely no idea of when something is going to change. It's not a negative thing, it just gets back to my point of view of just enjoy everything you have right now, every day, but be aware that you might need to roll with the punches.
Yep. I like it.
You just don't know what's going to happen. So release the control a little bit. Enjoy it without focusing on, I must have this in order to be happy. Just be happy now. Is kind of the thing. Just be happy. Just be happy now. And secondly, don't forget to go to the doctor. No matter who you are. Like, I was lucky I followed up on my bad hip, because if I hadn't, it could have turned out to be even worse than it is. So if you haven't been to the doctor for a while, even if there's nothing wrong with you, go and get a test. Go and get if you're a man of a certain age, 50 plus, or if you've got family history of cancer, go and talk to your doctor. If you haven't had a cholesterol test for a while, go and talk to your doctor. If you have got a weird mole on you that you haven't had checked out, go and talk to your doctor. Because prevention or catching it early is far, far better.
Jeez, I should give the doc a call.
Yeah, Mark, one of my other clients, he asked the same thing. Obviously, like, I've seen him before, whatever. And I told him about it, and he called me up and was like, "How do I go and get a test?" And I sent him through the prostate cancer guidelines, whatever it was. I said, "Look, just go get a test, and see how you go from that." So
I guess people's biggest fear is finding out something. So
yeah.
If I don't go, I don't know.
Yeah, I've heard that before too. If you don't, I'd rather not know about it. Or trust me, I don't think the decline into an undiagnosed cancer is going to be particularly pleasant.
Yeah, I guess it gets to a point with no return, doesn't it?
Correct. I literally had one of when I'm having my first big scan, where they do the full body scan to see where the cancer is and if it's isolated to where they think it is. One of the medical scanners said to me, "Oh, how did you find it?" She said, "Oh, it was in my hip, started to hurt, and I followed it up." And she said, "Well done." Because unfortunately, they see people who come through who haven't followed up a niggle, and then it's too late. So don't let it become too late.
I do have one story on that real quick before we do go to my final wrap-up question. Recently, I was told about a client of mine, one of her family members, extended family members, went into hospital last week with a shoulder issue, and was like, "Oh, my shoulder's sore, whatever, it's been sore for a while." Went in, scanned, it all came up yellow, leukemia, and now he's in an induced coma a week later.
Wow.
So get the check, follow up.
Yeah.
I heard it, I was like, yeah, and obviously with yourself, with your hip, doing follow it up, like not just follow up, but like next, got more painful, got to go check it again.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
The follow up on the follow up.
Yeah. So and that was significant, so. That just kind of reinforced that, like, that's the message.
I might go see Duncan next week.
Go see Dunk, man. Go see Dunk. The last one I was going to say is, like, the last question I was going to ask, how did that first jump back feel?
Oh, skydiving. It was quite phenomenal. So I got the all clear to jump, and then I waited till I finished radiotherapy when I was feeling good again, and it was, I think, mid-February or something like that. It was really weird because it was a beautiful blue, clear day that was quite warm. And I'll be honest with you, wasn't the least bit nervous or scared.
Brilliant.
It was phenomenal. There was 6 of us in the plane, I think, and I was the last one out. And And it was just, all right, see you later.
When was your last jump before that? How long ago?
That was July, so I hadn't jumped in about 8 months.
Yeah, okay.
So it was intriguingly calming.
Yes.
Knowing that it sounds odd jumping out of a plane, but the idea of I get to jump out of a plane again, and it was just relaxing.
Yeah.
It was really quite a weird scenario.
We all landed.
But I landed fine as well. So
No dramas.
No
and
dramas.
I was like, you know what? We all landed and lived. We're gonna get you on the show. That was it. So yeah. So thank you for coming on. Like,
it's been tremendous.
For coming on. That's awesome.
You know, I love talking about my story, not from my point of view, but in the hope that other people out there going through something or not sure what to do about stuff, or even just going to the doctor to get a checkup for something, might spur them on to stay fit, strong, and
I
healthy.
absolutely think you will. So
and hopefully our reporting and interview skills were on point.
hope you're not judging our setup too much.
No, we've had a lot of fun. I think this is more fun than a lot of things that we do.
It's very chill. It's very
casual.
That's how we roll. That's how we roll.
We will be back with some more shit soon. Hopefully you learned some stuff from today. And once again, thank you, Will, for being on board. And we'll see you guys very soon.